Hello everybody. I hope you can hear me well because outside it is raining really hard, and I hope the live stream will work well with this internet connection and sound quality and everything. Let me know in the comments if it works out well. And welcome again to another live stream for NIO Earnings. This time we got them earlier, and before starting the live stream this time I took some time to actually update my number in the Excel sheet that you can see behind me. And I think I will start with walking through those numbers first before I go into the report by the investor relations, which brings us a little bit more flavor or clarity, like the CFO, CEO comments and stuff like that. But first, let's look at the numbers. So I briefly saw them kind of because I obviously updated this Excel sheet here, and to be fair, like I would say, like my first reaction would be that this is kind of in line, not really out of this world. It's not something exciting so far that I've seen, not spectacular earnings, to be honest. But let's compare it a little bit with my personal estimations. So these. You see it here in this section. I have them. I shared those previously with my patrons in a live stream, and so these are my personal estimations going into this earnings. And the vehicle sales I estimated to be around 1.3 billion. And the other sales, like the e-commerce sales, but also on regulatory credits and stuff like that, the swapping and charging fees, all of those additional services that NIO is offering, I estimated to be around 116 million. And so roughly arriving at short of 1.5 billion in revenues there. But actually the revenues was higher, and I think even a little bit higher than the guidance. Let me look that one up for a second if I can find it quickly here on my other screen. So the guidance was should be similar. Yeah, no, it actually exceeded the guidance, which was 1.49 billion. So on revenues they have actually beat the guidance there, but I actually had quite similar expectations there. So happy to see that they have exceeded them slightly here and are quite close to my personal expectations. And then the first thing that I really noticed was that the vehicle margins have been lower than I personally estimated. So last quarter, I was actually estimating there would be around 22%, came in at 20%. And so for this quarter, I assumed 21%. So this time not an increase. And the reason I gave was because I thought, like, through all of the supply constraints, the chip shortages and stuff like that, they may actually go out and purchase some parts maybe at an increased rate and willing to pay more to get some cars out there. And this may actually hurt the vehicle margins. I'm not quite sure yet what is the real reason. I think I read something in the note here, but we'll get back to that later. But definitely it came in a little bit lower, and that is something, of course, not good for from an investor's perspective. So this should be something to watch out during the earnings call. What will the management say more around that? Why are the vehicle sales, the vehicle margin, coming in lower than expected? In total, the cost of sales has been a little bit higher, and that's than I personally estimated, and that's because I have lower estimations here on the other sales side mainly. That's due to the fact that I wasn't quite sure how many regulatory credits they would be booking. So that's quite hard to estimate this number, but still for the gross margin, I was expecting it could be around 21%, came in at 20.3%, which is lower than my estimation, but still it is higher than the actual in the last quarter. So it seems like I tend to really overestimate the gross margin here. But anyways, that's an increase here. which should be good. And yeah, in the end, the gross loss here, is it a gross? Yeah, the gross loss / profit is coming in here a little bit lower than I estimated. Then here for the research and development expenses, I was actually aiming already high, I thought, with minus 150 million. So spending on the ET7, the ET5, possibly the new models, also the Project Gemini and stuff like that, which is actually something that I like to see. So I'm not really minding if NIO is investing a lot into new products and into the research and development. We also know that they are making hirings for the chips, which they are now going into also producing and manufacturing themselves, or actually creating them themselves. And so it's interesting to see that they even exceeded my estimations here and spent 185 million. And I think that is possibly due mainly to the launch of the new products. Let's see what they have said in the report, and also the management call that is coming up later. Then for the SG&A, I already also had high expectations in terms of that they would spend a lot. And so 250 million. Last quarter, it was actually coming in at 230, which was already more than I personally expected. But I estimated that it would be roughly the same, but maybe a little bit more. And I explained to my patrons before that I was assuming that because I had the feeling that when they couldn't get the cars out and were like supply constraints, stuff like that, that they would kind of invest in infrastructure, which is of course costly, like the battery swapping stations, the charging infrastructure, which they're building out, NIO spaces, all of this, which is kind of, in the end leads also to more sales, of course. But in the first case, it would cost more. But I then looked also at the numbers of battery swap stations which they have built out, and found out that it isn't actually more than last quarter, so pretty much in line. And so I thought, okay, could be slightly more this time, because I have the feeling that the pace has increased for the battery swap stations built out. And this is also one of the main metrics where we still haven't as much clarity, like how much does this build out actually cost NIO in the end. I have some hints in other videos. I presented it as well already, like how much the swap stations are costing. And it's one of the criticism towards NIO that this infrastructure is more on the cost heavy side. And so, yeah, it's coming in here slightly higher, but still, I wouldn't say this isn't kind of a bad figure. Like it's not like really excessive in my point of views. And given that they have had like a very substantial build out of battery swap stations, which I think is important, I would say this number is pretty good. Although still, of course, like the costs in general, the expenses are coming in higher than I originally have been anticipating here as well. Then obviously also the loss from operations. So even though there was a profit on a gross profit, once again, of course, this is a negative quarter for NIO. I was also assuming that in the end, like there will be a net loss, which is actually a figure lower here, but we can clearly see that NIO is still losing money during this quarter, which was to be expected on my point of view. But of course, some people have been speculating whether or not NIO may actually already break even this quarter. I think they have a theoretical chance of actually still breaking even in Q4 2021. But I'm always also in the views that this is not kind of necessary for NIO to show a profit right now, and also not really to please Wall Street right now in terms of the earnings per share, because we need to have the views towards NIO that it's really still a startup in kind of the early stages. It's not yet a Tesla, which is continuously printing now profitable quarters. That is also just happening like the last couple of recent quarters. And so I think NIO may need a little bit more time, but it could theoretically happen within the next couple of quarters anyways. Right, so these are, my personal estimations versus the actuals, and yeah, if I can sum it up again, pretty much in line with my personal estimations, maybe besides the vehicle margin, which, yeah, I would say would be maybe my closest point to watch for the earnings call. Or now let's look into the report. And let me close that window here for now and go into my browser. Let's see if there's any additional information around the vehicle margin. But first, let's start from the top. I think I've covered most of the numbers which should be mentioned here before. Once again, this is again all live, so I haven't fully read all of this take yet. Still, let's see. Here are some comments. Delivery in July 2021. NIO delivered. Okay, these are just normal vehicle sales numbers. Renewal of the joint manufacturing agreement. Okay, just stating the obvious here that they have once again extended the deal with JAC. And they mentioned that they're gonna build a ES8, ES6, EC6, and ET7, and potentially other models with JAC. Okay, so now here they name something more specific. JAC will expand its annual production capacity to 240,000 units. Okay, I think so that will be, it's nice that they put it here into the report, because that will give some guidance to those numbers for investors to see what is the, what are the plans in order to meet the growing demand for NIO vehicles. NIO will be in charge of the vehicle development and engineering, supply chain management. Okay. Okay, so that's speaking of the current factory. So they don't give an exact timeline for the 240,000 units. I think the factory can ultimately reach like 300,000 units. But so this gives us, I would say, with the retooling, that was also one of the reasons why the October numbers have been down a little bit. They should be close to this number in terms of an annual production, possibly with some more work to do for other upgrades. Extraordinary general meeting. NIO held a meeting. Okay, that was back in June, approving proposals to amend and restate the memorandum. Oh yeah, okay, I remember that this was very legally heavy and still quite unsure, like what has been the bigger purpose of this meeting. There are rumors around that this has to do with the proposed Hong Kong IPO of NIO, which I think would be a great thing, because that would be the first step of having more Chinese nationals being able to invest in NIO. Right now, it's just US listed. So hopefully with a move to Hong Kong or a secondary listing, NIO will be able to come closer to the homeland, if you will, and thereby should have more investors that really understand the depth and the big vision of this company. Because in my point of view, NIO is like a one-in-a-lifetime company. It's something similar like Apple. People will see once they have expanded to the West. And I think Chinese do understand this company much better than most Westerners yet. So that would be great. But once again, this is just my speculation and rumor about this general meeting. Then appointment of the independent director. Oh, sorry, guys. I've been reading the second quarter post. What? No, nobody is giving me a hint. I need to, damn it. I need to have the comments up here. All right, good. Now I have the comments up here. You know, that's the stuff that's happening if it's live. Thank you guys for tuning in to my second quarter comment here. All right, let's move on. is all still relevant, say, about Hong Kong and also the renewal of the manufacturing agreement. These are important milestones to repeat here, which I think still makes sense. But anyways, now let's finally look into the other quarter. I shouldn't have opened the tab for the last one. All right, let's go back here. So what else? Let me just quickly check whether there is any information that shouldn't be skipped here. Okay, so let's jump to those kind of commentary section again for now, this time the third quarter. Deliveries, we can skip, of course. Completion of the controlling equity interest in NIO China. So this is one thing to do with people are always very concerned about this whole NIO company structure, not only to do with the VIE structure, but also how it's separated between NIO China and the ADR. And I think it's a very bullish move here that NIO is actually buying back shares in NIO China because, you need to see that Li Bin is one of the largest shareholders of NIO, and he is using some of the money raised in order to increase also in the end the outcome for us shareholders, and so, because it's also his own intrinsic interest. And so I think it's really cool that now they have now this 92% controlling equity interest in NIO China. And this is also, I think, possibly partly how they use this at-the-market offering, where we are still in the dark for how and what and how they are raising it. And we just know that after they have raised it, they actually issued this notice around that they even once again increased their stake in NIO China again. And so I know from all of the comments that I usually get from you guys on the videos that lots of people are really so concerned around this whole dilution topic. And in my point of view, it isn't actually that bad, to be honest. It is to be expected. Even now, people are asking again, like, will NIO raise cash again? And I think, yes, they will, even though I think let me jump to the cash section. 7.3 billion. That's loads of cash. So NIO, even before raising this additional round, possibly didn't need that cash like really quickly. But I think it is just to be expected when growing that the company is doing that. And the bigger question is always, can they increase the cake? So is the whole company growing and getting bigger? I have an issue like once the company has grown big and they keep on issuing shares and diluting shareholders, that would be an issue. But so far, I would say, that this has been also be a reaction to, and then maybe that's good that I started reading the Q2 post. But here, of course, this extraordinary general meeting and so on, which they prepare to go to Hong Kong, which in the end didn't work out so far. Maybe also put some pressure on NIO because, of course, Li Auto and XPeng, they are now, we see that in the markets performing a little bit better than NIO. And I think there might be a reason, one of the reasons might be that they are already listed in Hong Kong. And so they have more cash, they have the investors that are closer to the market and to the company. And so maybe this was one of the reasons about this at-the-market offering. And as I see here, there isn't more explanation here. So maybe, hopefully, some of the analysts will ask some questions during the earnings call. That would be good. Okay, let's read the CEO and CFO comments. We achieved another all-time high quarter, deliveries, blah, 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 presenting a solid growth, 100% year over year. So I'm personally also expecting, and I mentioned that in one of my latest videos, that I think they may continue to grow 100% year over year in the next couple of years still. If that would be the case, then NIO can really become very, very big also in terms of the stock price, in my point of view. if I compare that to what, for instance, Deutsche Bank analyst is saying currently, that is an aggressive case, but still, I think the market should be ready for it. I think the EV numbers, the EV market is growing that big and that fast that even the analysts are currently kind of underestimating what possibly companies like NIO can do here. Our demand continues to be strong, and our new orders reached a new record high in October. So, okay, adding that one here specifically again, of course, to assure investors here, possibly they will tune in and say something similar during the earnings call, because of course they know currently NIO is kind of under pressure in terms of putting out those delivery numbers. And so reassuring, very important now. Despite the continued supply chain volatilities, our team and partners are working closely together to secure the supply and production for the fourth quarter, okay? Meanwhile, we are fully dedicated to accelerating our products and technologies development and bringing the 3 new products based on NIO Technology Platform 2.0. That's nice that they mention it here, because I think this will be a game changer. And I think this is not regarded by investors of what kind of innovation this will bring, specifically regarding the autonomy platform. And I'm actually even hoping that with this retooling of the factory with JAC NIO, that they may actually bring this platform to the old models. NIO is, I think, and that's also just evolving right now, but it's one of the few car companies that can actually do over-the-air software updates. They can even do the over-the-air firmware updates. Plus, there are rumors, or actually even official presentations by NIO, that they can also upgrade other hardware parts like 5G, the chips in the car, the displays, stuff like that. So yeah, they have been criticized for that. Their models that are currently selling are based on an older platform and even older than the competition. But that's why 2022 is so important, and why I think this new platform will be really decisive. And it's kind of really good timing here, I would say. All right. And he's going to lead the smart EV transformation and adoption. Nice. I like it. Actually, in the last earnings call, in a Q2 call, he's been very, very bullish. It was one of the best earnings calls I've heard from NIO and from Li Bin. I hope he's also in a good mood today, despite not record-breaking numbers so far. I see it, but that would be good to have another great earnings call. We achieved new heights with our third quarter delivery while upholding a healthy financial performance with an 80% vehicle margin and a 20.3% gross margin. Yeah, once again, I would say the 18% vehicle margin is a bit low, not spectacular. The 20.3% gross margin is great, including the sales of regulatory credits. Okay, so finally they started to sell regulatory credits again, which is bumping the gross margin there. And we broaden our user base and enter global new markets. Norway, we are determined to further expand our sales and sales network. Okay, so here they kind of talk a little bit about their strategic positioning, about going global, and the infrastructure deployment, kind of emphasizing that one, and I think rightly so. Okay, revenues, I don't have to talk through. Other sales, let's see if they have some specifics. Okay, the increase was mainly due to the sales of automotive regulatory credits. I was assuming so. And battery upgrade service. Okay, that might be interesting. Maybe that's not in this report, but might be in the earnings call, how they have started adopting the 100 kilowatt hour battery. And yeah, no, the latest, the LFP battery is not based on that quarter yet, but that may have kind of increased some of the sales here. I'm always looking also to, well, now they don't make any specifics about NIO Live yet in terms of the offline retail and the online retail. I'm very much looking forward to this. I'm kind of in my business case. I am trying to make some guesstimates about how much NIO users are spending in the app and also in going to the NIO stores and to the NIO houses and stuff. I think unfortunately the numbers are still too low in order to see how this is developing, but that's kind of happening under the hood, I think. And once again, I need to repeat myself here because I think this other sales could become a very huge revenue stream in the future. I've modeled that one in my business case. If you are more interested in that, you can watch it in my Patreon community where I have like a 1-hour walkthrough. Cost, sales, and gross margin. Cost of sales is not so important here, I would say. Let's say the gross margin. Okay, the gross margin was driven by the increase of vehicle margin, and the sales of automotive regulatory credits. No, okay, for this quarter it was just mainly for the credits. That makes sense. Vehicle margin compared with last year, 14.5%. So yeah, you see that it's increasing on the really long term, but it's obviously down from the second quarter. Higher average selling price. Yeah, the decrease, they say, is coming from increased financing at subsidized rates for vehicle purchases. Interesting, which result in deduction of the vehicle revenue and increase in tooling depreciation cost. Okay. Well, that's definitely something to watch there. I noticed that NIO has actually set up, I think, a new in mainland China. They kind of launched a bond or something similar for vehicle finance. So maybe that was a reaction to what they kind of blaming here the vehicle margin decrease. As I mentioned before, like in my estimations, I thought it may be mainly the case because of the supply chain constraints and stuff like that, where they kind of have some higher cost on some of the parts which they are going to purchase, but I wasn't thinking about financing. And so, yeah, I would say, that's definitely going forwards. I hope they will explain it more during the earnings call, but that's something to watch for sure. In the earnings call, they usually also are asked by the analysts like how this will develop in the future. But I would say it's not a problem right now, but maybe this will also get better with the new this new bond which they launched, which is explicitly for helping users to finance the cars. And yeah, I know that NIO has started also 0 down payment at some times, and for all of the people who have to wait for the cars, they're also offering like zero financing. I think what they really need to do here is, because they are supply constrained and that they cannot fulfill all the orders in time right now, they really need to work a little bit here with the financing also, in terms of having people not cancel some of the orders here. So that might be an issue. Research and development. Let's see if they talk about specifically attributed to the increased personal cost in research and development functions, as well as the incremental design and development cost for new products and technologies. Okay, so here the question would be like how much the personal cost will actually be kind of sustainable or long-lasting, because they have hired like great persons recently from an American chip maker, for instance. And so, yeah, of course, those are high-paid individuals. I think also designers coming from Volvo and stuff like that. So this may actually add a little bit more cost pressure there. But I mean, this is really important for me to build a strong brand and quality vehicles, which I think is the main case for NIO there. Plus, at the design and development cost, I don't mind them at all for the new products and technologies. Let's see if they talk about okay, they mentioned the personal costs in sales, service functions, and costs related to sales and service network expansion. Okay, so they're not talking specifically about the infrastructure. Maybe we get a question about that during the earnings call. But yeah, as I've mentioned before, it's a little bit higher than I personally even expected, but nothing out of this world yet. I think it's okay. So loss from operation, as I mentioned before, like the loss from operation and the net loss, for me, that's not a super big deal. You also have like stuff like, of course, like the employee stock options, which they are issuing, and things like that. I think still next quarter, they may pull a profitable quarter if they kind of want to. I think the numbers would allow for it, but right now I wouldn't mind if this actually happens in 2022. I know maybe some more short-term oriented investors would differ of that opinion, and I know that, well, for Tesla at least, the moment that they were breaking even, the stock, of course, went nuts, but that was also maybe a special case. And also we need to see that NIO is much, much younger, so they have achieved quite a bit also during the very short term. So let's look at the business outlook, and they guide for 23,500 to 25,500 vehicles, which isn't like a very high guidance. It's only up 4% from this quarter. And similar revenues, again, like a slight increase, again, 1.5 billion, maybe a little bit more. So that's not a super bullish guideline. But let me check in my sales tracking quickly here on another sheet. So that would land us roughly at 92,000 vehicles. If they reach the upper guidance, so roughly between 90,000 and 92,000 seems to be the range right now. I originally estimated 95,000, and I think that this may actually still be possible if it's business as usual. I think that the guidance here is a little bit no. Maybe there are sandbagging, or there are some issues around supply constraints still that they surely will talk about during the conference call, which will happen later. I don't see any explanation here. Maybe I'm missing something. No. Okay, now I've talked a lot, and I think I need to look at some of your comments here. Anything that I have missed? Right now, NIO's down 2.3% after market, which isn't too bad either. Usually, NIO is selling off after earnings. That's quite usual. Even I think 1 year ago, NIO was rallying, I think 30% after the Q3 earnings into December, but still, right after earnings, it was a setback of, I think, around 5 to 10% even. And so that's quite usual. Plus, again, I was actually expecting, maybe I can open the chart here, but I was expecting that NIO could hold at the current uptrend today, but that wasn't the case because Tesla kind of played games with the entire market today. So yeah, NIO was, of course, dragged down like this. Sorry for the messy chart. I was using that one previously for another video. And so, yeah, as you can see, it broke down here this thin line today, where I was expecting that it would actually hold closer to this downward trend line, big resistance, and then either break with a lot of steam to the upside here and possibly go till $51 US. That would be like the upside. Or now it could actually, yeah, test the 39 levels, 38, and should finally get support 37, but that's just some quick charting here. Let's see what happens. Let's take some of your questions. What are your takes? So to me, this is like a very, very not really spectacular video here. Earnings here. So I'm not sure if you guys are kind of disappointed by the earnings or if you are happy like this. Let's look through some of the comments. Okay, here's an interesting comment. I've noticed NIO provides conservative guidance, but over delivers at the end of the month if there are no major supply issues. Yeah, I agree with you, and that's also kind of my comment about this time. The guidance seems to be quite conservative, as I have mentioned, but it could be that they cannot guide higher because they simply cannot. Maybe there are fundamental issues currently, and but I agree with you. Usually they are kind of over-delivering in the end, but we also have to say, like, Q1 and Q2, in my point of view, have been extraordinary, especially Q1, and they also put out some quite aggressive guidance from time to time, and then also kind of had to step back a little bit and then kind of still managed to get it to their revised guidance. But yeah, let's see. I would also say that maybe this time they're kind of sandbagging here for the Q4. And that should be also a smart thing to do, because they know how quick it can happen now with all of the chip shortages and stuff like that. So summarize the earnings in one word. I would say solid. That would be my word. So nothing to, well, yeah, I'm not gonna open a bottle of champagne this time. Anyways, that's a bad habit of mine. But yeah, it's not good. It's not bad in my views. Quite neutral, which can be fine, as I mentioned before. This quarter wasn't too important in my point of view. For me, it's all about 2022 now. Interesting. One viewer here wants to sell 1,000 shares of NIO to go into Rivian. Well, I better don't comment on that, because yeah, like Lucid and Rivian and some of the other startups there, I personally would never invest in that. But no investment advice. Do what you think is the right thing to do, and where you love and understand the company. For me, NIO is like, once again, once in a lifetime company, this time from China. I think it will be a spectacular growth story. Of course, this year has been quite rough and tough, and it's not back to the all-time highs of the beginning of the year. But I'm not too worried about this, to be honest. Lots of macro events around with the US-China relations, stuff like that. Yeah, some people here seem to agree. Lucid and Rivian is garbage, overvalued. Well, I'm not into these companies, but I can personally say that I would never trade my NIO for these two companies. Okay, maybe a more emotional comment here. I'm quite disappointed in NIO these days, and well, it's always like a disappointment is how you manage your expectations, and possibly there have been lots of investors buying in the 40s, 50s, 60s when they just got aware about NIO, and then had a really bad year this time. And I am always saying, like on this channel, that NIO needs to breathe this year and needs to consolidate after a 1,000% run up last year. That was quite extraordinary. And I think NIO needs to do the groundwork, and there are lots of positive stuff, I would say, and many people are wondering why this positive stuff is not really moving the stock. But then also at some points, you also have sometimes those negative events, like the raising new money, or the miss on deliveries and stuff like that, and then even the shares are jumping. And I guess what I want to say here is that the markets don't really work the way we think about them usually, in terms of that we expect the stock to go up on good news only, but that's not always the case. And so I think what is really important, and what I'm trying to achieve here on this channel and by putting out those videos, is to understand the vision of this stock. And personally, I'm also having the views that this stock could be like $200 to $500, to give you a range. I think that is quite possible on a very long time horizon, but that doesn't mean that in the very short term NIO will go to 100 by the end of this year. It can certainly happen, but I'm not counting on that. That's not how the markets work, in my views. Another question: do you think NIO will be the next Tesla? No, I don't think so. As you may know, I am also a very big Tesla shareholder, actually before I started investing in NIO. And I think Tesla is quite a different company. I think they are quite different positioned in the market. And I think NIO is also very, very different. And actually, I think many Tesla investors or Tesla bulls even don't understand NIO. They think it's kind of a competitor to them and stuff like that. But I think they're quite different, and I like that. That's the way. That's also one of the reasons why I've invested in NIO, and why I'm personally, for example, not investing in XPeng, because I think XPeng, like Xiaopeng, they are actually competing more with Tesla in a similar price segment there. And yeah, XPeng is doing well in terms of the share price recently, and also in terms of how they are scaling the deliveries and so on, so respect for that. But I think they will have issues competing with Tesla in the long run, to be honest. Here's an interesting comment. I'm proud of NIO. They are making deals with companies in their field. They are putting out the infrastructure. They have managed to rig the factory to incorporate more products. Exactly. I think like there's so many things going on with NIO in the background. It's really, really an amazing and exciting company in my point of view. And that's maybe something which it has similar to Tesla, that they are tapping in so many revenue and business opportunities and are really well positioned for that. And in the case of NIO, it's very important to say that NIO is kind of extraordinary, that it's the first Chinese company that managed to position themselves in the premium to luxury segment as a Chinese company for Chinese buyers, which is, Chinese used to buy Western brands like Mercedes, Audi, BMW, and so on. And usually for a Chinese brand to break into this market, it's quite impossible in the past. And so they're doing lots of different things, which I think is really something that will be written into some of the business books in the future, like for MBA students, the first Chinese company that will be regarded well in terms of the product and the brand and the quality and the service overseas, in a way be successful like none of the Chinese companies has been before. Exactly, NIO Life here, that's the key word. Yeah, commenting on that one, good part is they bought back more of NIO China. Yeah, once again, I mentioned that one when talking through the comments here. And I agree with that. This is one of the greatest things about what NIO has done during this quarter, using some of the proceeds of raising capital for buying back more. And this is a very bullish sign, because in the end, this is good for the shareholders. If they wouldn't buy it, they wouldn't need to do that, right? And it helps on many levels. It helps for the delisting threat, because then There is a smaller government stake. The government stake yet is still big enough to have all of the support for NIO going forward. And then, once again, for future dividends, which could be an outcome in, let's say, 5 years, if NIO is making lots of money, all of this free cash flow, and I haven't talked about it much actually during this live stream here, but let's maybe look at this one. The free cash flow is actually getting bigger and bigger, and that's because of this lean model. So now 1.3 billion, and I know there are different ways of calculating free cash flow, but this is something very important for investors. Like, how much money is this company generating, and how obviously later on this can be hopefully transferred into profits, right? But currently all of this cash is coming into this company, and they can choose to either reinvest it, to pay to suppliers and stuff like that. NIO here has this setup, which I also find quite exciting, to be honest. The way that they don't own their own factory. I know many people don't really like that, but I personally like that because they can focus on other stuff. They don't have to compete with a Tesla on having the lowest cost of producing. They just give it to JAC for the manufacturing. It doesn't mean that they have no influence over how good the cost reductions are, how the outcome of the products are. In fact, the products are qualitatively very high. I mean, I've been driving NIOs in China, and I love it. From a German perspective, I mean, I can tell you that every German who's going to sit in a NIO car will actually feel like this is like a Mercedes or BMW. So I like this model, and I would hope actually that they bring this model even to Europe, possibly at some point in time. Maybe there will be a manufacturer that is going bankrupt in Germany, who knows, and then they could use those capacities. They will produce on behalf of NIO, or like Magna, stuff like that, going into the US, thereby also solving stuff like this, cross-country issues like the US-China relations, where, of course, a Chinese brand, a Chinese company coming to the US is quite tricky right now. We all know that. But for instance, if they are using American factories instead of producing in China, that could be a huge deal, and it would fit to NIO's model. So bullish for that, but that is maybe years down the line. Did you say salad or solid? No, one word to summarize this earnings, I would say it's solid. I would, at this point in time, I would never sell my NIO stock, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else. I actually just made one video in my Patreon around the whole issue, like, when will I sell my NIO? When will I sell my Tesla? When will I sell my Bitcoin? Because we just saw Elon Musk going out there saying he's selling 10% of his Tesla. And I mean, he always said like he's first in and last out. But of course, now there are conflicts emerging around the topic that billionaires are getting richer and richer and having those unrealized gains. And I find this conversation actually quite hilarious, to be honest. Now everyone is blaming on China for their, how's it called, a common prosperity topic, in which they try to kind of mitigate this, or like close the income gap, and have more people participate in society and wealth. And the same discussion we have in the West, actually. But yeah, lots of bad news around that for China. And now Elon Musk, he is facing a similar issue in the US. But actually, coming back to the NIO topic here, no, I wouldn't sell my NIO stock right now. Yeah, that one is an interesting one. Can NIO be the first Chinese company with $1 trillion market cap? And frankly, I think it can be. Yeah, I think NIO has this potential. Of course, there are many question marks around this regarding how investors, international investors, are seeing Chinese companies. We know that Chinese companies are trading at a discount because of the risk. But I think large parts of this risk are perceived. They are not real risks, in my point of view. And I think times can change how these things are actually perceived. And so, well, if you look 5 to 10 years down the road, many things may happen. China may actually gain more importance on terms of financial markets. So I spoke before about the Q2 call accidentally and the Q3 call, how important this Hong Kong listing could be. But there is even more. NIO could actually list in Shanghai, maybe in Shenzhen, maybe in Beijing at some point in time. If all of the Chinese who are now kind of realizing that investing in property cannot be like the sole solution, when they are finally able to invest in companies like NIO, and they would be willing to pay much higher prices, I think there will be kind of a new balance in the ways Chinese equities are kind of valuated. And then NIO has, in my point of view, like all of the ingredients to become a $1 trillion company. But then also in a macro environment, we need to see like what does a $1 trillion company still mean in a couple of years with all of the money that's being printed, and so we also need to see that one in relation. But let's, on the positive side, I think it's possible, but of course this is in a very distant future, and I'm not saying that this is 100% going that road. I mean, today in the earnings we saw that there are issues with the vehicle margin, so we need better explanations for that. They're not looking great in a decline quarter over quarter. Nothing to worry about now, but NIO could fail. I mean, maybe there are not many people who want to buy a NIO car, or maybe NIO will never turn profitable. Who knows? I think it's unlikely. I think it's not going to happen, but it could happen. So NIO could stay at this level, valuated where they are. They could even drop at some point in time if, for instance, they do not manage to also come up with more software-related or autonomy-related services and revenues. That's a good question. When do you think NIO will reach scaling stage? And I think that's a good point. I think many people have maybe the expectation towards NIO right now that they should really scale like a Tesla right now. And I think Tesla really is the king of scale. I mean, the way they're building the gigafactories everywhere and how they are automating the manufacturing is incredible. But I think there are also lots of wrong perceptions and notions towards NIO. Many people are saying like NIO is not vertically integrated, which is not the case. NIO has their own skateboards developed with their own drivetrain, which is now updated. That's why they mentioned here also in this earnings again the NT 2.0 platform, and that's important. And so NIO is owning the technology. They have a vertical integration where it matters, but NIO once again is not relying on becoming a mass market producer like Tesla or XPeng right now. So I always have this kind of analogy, like Tesla is the next Volkswagen and NIO is like the next BMW, Audi, and maybe even a Porsche in a way. So I think they could reach to 1 million vehicles produced annually, maybe more. May actually even stay slightly lower than that. But that would actually be already sufficient in my point of view to reach a higher valuation for certainly, and to become a very successful company. They don't need to sell mass market vehicles. I know they have now plans, and actually in the last earnings call they talked about this as well. But I'm not super bullish about these plans of also developing a mass market brand on top of that. Let's see. The investors are certainly going to like that. But for me, the core is like really this premium to luxury brand NIO, which I think standing alone can really succeed. And so for the scaling, I think like 2022 will be really where we'll see the first bigger scaling in terms of, I think once again they could pull another 100% year-over-year growth, and then 2023 will be when NIO Park is actually up and running. I think maybe by the end of next year it's already online, but then it needs some time to scale. And so, yeah, the next 2 years are going to be, I think, really good in terms of growth and deliveries. But once again, they don't need the same numbers of cars produced monthly as a Tesla or an XPeng, simply because they also have higher average sales prices. And that even means that even, the vehicle margin now is lower, but the vehicle margin is still applied to a higher average sales prices. So it matters if you sell the car on average for 30K or like NIO for 55K. So they just keep earning more in each of the cars that they're selling, even if maybe they have a different vehicle margin there. So I think I'm not worried about this at all. I think all of those who are really worried about the scale and like comparing it to the delivery numbers of XPeng and stuff like that doesn't make much sense in my point of view. Would we see NIO in the US? Well, they actually already have an office in California, which has been scaled down during the times that NIO was almost going bankrupt. But I think it will take a little bit of time. So I think the priority now is in Europe, which I think actually is even the bigger market for EVs right now. And yeah, so America, the US is a little bit more difficult as a Chinese company and brand. I think maybe they first try to kind of create a, let's say, success case in Europe, which kind of would also open the doors to the US a little bit more. I'm very certain that NIO cars would be accepted well. There would be demand in the US for it. I'm pretty sure about this, but there's just more to it. And I think like, the way NIO is now going into Europe makes a lot of sense, like Norway, where they don't have import taxes. So first of all, it makes it less complicated to ship the cars and get up and running and some traction into this new market. And then I think, well, I know that there's a big team of NIO in Germany already. And so that is building lots of roots there, like having contacts with politicians, with the industry, stuff like that. I think, yeah, Germany could really be like the second home for NIO in the near-term future. So that will be the next steps before we see them really in the US. And maybe even before the UK, because I think NIO mentioned before that yeah, they're not so focused right now on having the steering wheel on the other side. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, once again, NIO is a startup, so lots of complications already because they are introducing so many new models, right? Like the EC6 is new. I mean, even the ES6 isn't that old, and the EC6 is new. Then the E7 now coming out, ET5 now getting in, and we've seen like how many difficulties Tesla had with the Model 3 ramp, and now they have just another model like the Model Y, and Tesla is of course ramping that much quicker than anyone. Really impressive. But that's why I'm saying like NIO has possibly a little bit too much on their plate currently with ramping all of these models, and so that's maybe some of these growing pains there. Yeah, NIO and Tesla eat Volkswagen lunch. Actually, I think Volkswagen is the company in Germany that is most committed to EVs, but kind of because they have to, because of the Dieselgate, and but yeah. They try to rebrand, and they have most of the new EVs on the roads, although like the e-trons, for instance, which is part of Audi and then obviously part of the Volkswagen group, are of course not from scratch or ground up developed electric cars, right? So we'll see much innovation there, I think, in the next couple of years, but I think it possibly needs until 2024, 2025 until they can have something on the road that can kind of really catch up with something that Tesla and NIO are doing. And so, yeah, I think Tesla is eating into the mass market segment of of Volkswagen there, and NIO is eating into the luxury to premium segment of Volkswagen there. So you might be right that they are eating the lunch, although they are also good at scaling. They have those, like Volkswagen knows how to build cars, and they know also how to build some EVs. But there are issues around the companies, like the dealerships, the software side. Like, to be honest, I think I really like the ID.3. It's a nice looking car, and I think the ID.4 could be successful as well, just from the looks outside. But I think sitting in the car, like the software really has some issues, and they're far off playing a role in the autonomy segment. So these are some issues there, where I think Tesla for sure, and also the Chinese companies are better positioned, and also understanding the young user. And that's why also NIO is so important, because it's not so much only about the cars, it's even more about this whole new lifestyle, which fairly well connects to the Chinese premium consumer there. And let's see how this can be also successful in Europe. Exactly, that's what I just mentioned, the NIO ecosystem. To be honest, even Tesla is starting to copy some stuff. Like I saw a Tesla magazine coming out just after NIO has also done that. Like they started a social network on their app, which is something that NIO obviously has introduced. And the delivery centers in China for Tesla are much different than they are in the rest of the world. Like if you're delivered a car for Tesla in Germany, it's like come in, go out, 5 minutes, not much luxury there and stuff like that, just checking if there are any issues and so on. In China, they have like this whole thing, like, like with a gift in the trunk, and like a nice decoration and stuff like that. Why? Because NIO has also set the standard and the bar to this level, and showing like this deep service commitment that is necessary in China. And frankly, living in China before, like this is, if you just go to a normal place for shopping on offline retail, this is really super important in China. And so I think the Chinese companies, of course, understand the Chinese users also better in this regard. NIO Day should propel stock. I also think it's likely, to be honest. We'll have to see like how these earnings are digested. Now it's -1% post-market. Once again, I mentioned before, like this could well tank a little bit again. The chart, like just from the technical side, is not looking great right now after what happened today, but mainly because of Tesla and this whole Elon Musk story there. But let's see. Maybe although this earnings are just solid, it's nothing spectacular. So there is nothing intrinsic which could kind of really pull the stock upwards there. But NIO Day certainly will be exciting again. And to be honest, I'm very excited about the ET7 launch more than anything else, because, and I should do a video about this, I think it will surprise on the autonomy side. What else? Did I miss anything in the report? Once again, this was all live here. Live in a way that I even read the Q2 earnings in the beginning. That's an interesting comment. Do you think NIO will continue collaborating with XPeng on the battery swap infrastructure? Maybe I missed here something, but as far as I know, that NIO is not collaborating with XPeng on the infrastructure in terms of the swapping, because XPeng has no battery swapping, but they do collaborate on the charging side. And so, I think they will continue to do that. And the CEOs and owners, they are buddies, so they get along together well. But on a battery swap infrastructure side, I see rather yeah, maybe some more of the traditional manufacturers could be potentially adopting the swapping model because they have to. I mentioned it before, maybe even a big company like Volkswagen, those companies that have a big stake in China, because China is making it a national standard. And that is well connected with what NIO is doing. And NIO is happy with that because they get subsidies, and some of the more state-owned enterprises like Sinopec is collaborating on that. So should have lots of traction from the policy side of it. But of course, there's a national agenda behind it, which is around setting new standards in an industry which others have to adopt. And in a way, this is kind of unfair, but China really likes to set those kind of technological standards and helping their companies. So that's just the way China plays. I know there are people who are, not happy around how China is dealing with that, and also not happy about battery swapping at all. But I can totally understand it from a Chinese perspective. And that's oftentimes what Westerners get wrong when they look at China. They think China has to work like the West, and that's not the case. And so we cannot measure China by Western standards. And let's see whether or not battery swapping will be adopted in the West, or how far or how well it can scale. I mean, there are doubts around this for sure, but well, I think it's something that is certainly exciting to watch. Like, bystanders are usually looking at those swaps, how they are executed and like how they perform, and it's something interesting to see. And then, having a full charge battery in 3 to 5 minutes, it's something unusual to see. You may charge your other EV and have a battery swap station just right next to you, and then the NIO car comes and goes in just a couple of minutes while you are still waiting. So this kind of experiences, we'll see whether or not they kind of impress also Western EV buyers. So once again, this is a thing that is most likely successful for like long trips. So let's say close to the Autobahn, like highways, or within the city where people don't have even home chargers. But even in China, I think there's a high take rate for home chargers for NIO. And so, that's also, once again, a misconception about battery swapping. People think that's the only way of recharging. It's not. It's a way of upgrading the battery, having optionality. It's a way of decreasing the down payment. It's a way of convenience, and having at some points, if you need it, quite fast recharging. And that's a good comment here. Also, those swap stations can serve, well, maybe in a limited way, but still for solar as well as the grid, for balancing the grid. And I think this is super exciting. I really love that. Maybe just as a personal background, I also did a master's in environmental sciences like a couple of years ago, worked in the German Chamber of Industry, German Chamber for Industry and Commerce in Beijing, in the environmental department. And back then we were like making all of those presentations and slides around like, solar, renewables, and EVs. And there was nothing inside, but China was investing heavily already back then. I only followed BYD back then and saw like how much China is investing in solar and like wind. But now I think China is reaping the fruits from that. And so it's really nice to see that this is finally coming into consumer products. And so even if the solar, like the space where you can fit solar panels on a swap station is not really big, right? But like this, the way the space is used, and that's also, I think, one of the cool things about battery swap stations is that they take just a tinier space than all of those parking lots necessary for the supercharging, for instance. On a tiny space you can swap the cars, up to 300 cars per day, and then recharge them with solar power and at night feed some of the battery into the grid, or the other way, use cheap electricity to recharge the batteries overnight. So that's a really cool concept in my point of view. Makes a lot of sense. And so I'm very supportive for this, although we don't know how well it will work and scale in the West. What else? Let's check some more comments here before I close it off. What do I think about Polestar? I first saw the Polestar, which is an EV brand by Volvo, in Shanghai, actually, during the CES. I think that was in 2018. Yeah, actually, when I met the co-founder of NIO and I interviewed him. And to be honest, when the design looks fresh and everything, but when I was walking up that Polestar exhibition model there, I really I wasn't impressed by the quality, to be honest. And it looked kind of cheapish to me, like a little bit more like plastic, not the nicest materials and stuff. But I'm not a car expert in terms of that. I'm testing all the different models and cars and stuff like that. So I leave that to the other experts and think that it is surely a nice looking car and possibly maybe successful, maybe even a better experience than my first impressions during CES in Shanghai. So not up to me to judge whether or not that's a good car, but for me, that's not an invest case, if that's your question. I know Geely is doing quite well, which is having stakes in Volvo and so on. So Geely is also an interesting company in terms of that they also come up with their own battery swapping. But yeah, I also don't like their seeker concept in a way too much, that they're kind of really doing a hard copy of what NIO is doing there. Let's see. I personally, I need to see it with my own eyes first. So maybe a little bit of a prejudice here as well. Yeah, right. We've got more earnings coming up. Exnet on Thursday. Unfortunately, I may not be able to cover it live, but I will have it covered. And then there is also SAP coming up next week. And yeah, just what I can say is I loaded up on Exnet a lot during this downturn for SAP Health as well. Still bullish on these companies. And looking very forward to their earnings calls. And I'll definitely have them covered here on the channel as well. All right, if there's not many more questions, then I'll end it here. That's 1 hour into the stream. I thank you all for watching the live stream. And I will have another video covering the earnings call, the conference, and let's see if Li Bin is once again in a good mood and having maybe some more explanations around the margins and stuff like that. And personally, I'm not worried too much if NIO is not in the green tomorrow or the next couple of days. Sometimes it takes like 3 days to digest. And yeah, after that should hopefully start a run into the NIO day, and 2022 will be big in my point of view. So that's awesome. Looking very much forward to this. And yeah, let's see. I still think that the share price will be up going into the end of the year. So once again, thank you guys for watching. Have a good night wherever you are, and then see you tomorrow.